will be very loud, and we will make our way out through the door that you came in. We'll go down the corridor a little bit and out down the back stairs, okay? And we assemble down the bottom. That's kind of it. The toilets are directly opposite out the back. And I think that's kind of it. If you could keep your phones on silent, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Okay. That's basically the housekeeping. So this evening, we are going to be filming as well. We've had numerous requests over the course of these previous events. Could we stream the event? So hope that's okay with everyone. The camera's kind of pointing this way, so it's kind of going over people's heads, back of heads. So it's just the speakers in shot. Okay, so that will be online on YouTube, so you can share the link with other people, should you choose. Otherwise, just wanted to see a show of hands. Who's been to the Fusebox before? Can you just see who hasn't been to the Fusebox before? Okay, well, welcome. Thank you for coming. This is the home of Wired Sussex, membership organisation that's been serving creative digital and IT sector in Brighton for a good 10, 15 years now. We are the delivery partner for the Digital Catapult, the government's innovation initiative. Immersive tech is kind of like a big theme and a big deal for the Digital Catapult, and certainly here in Brighton. Learning and training, the theme of tonight, is also a very big sector interest in Brighton and Hove, and has been for a number of years. So be interested to know who would say that they were from the learning tech sector. Okay. And who would say they were an immersive, who was into immersive tech? Okay. Okay, thanks. Interesting. Okay, I'm going to very briefly speak about our residency program here, because we do have some opportunities for those that are starting businesses, thinking about starting businesses, just kind of want to hang out with other interesting creative people. We offer a residency here on a kind of really cheap, well-subsidised basis, £50 a month. You can come and hang out here, basically, use all the facilities, and meet with, join with all sorts of collaborators. We've even got a business base here that met through these kinds of events. So it's kind of happening in a big way. It's interesting. We've got artists, we've got creative technologists, we've even got surveyors, we've got a doctor in the house. It's a really interesting, eclectic mix. So if you're interested in the residency program, do give me a shout after the talks and the demos later on. Okay, so the speakers this evening, really delighted to welcome Ed Barton from Curiscope as our first speaker. Ed's got to shoot off pretty soon, so I'm going to hand over to Ed in just a moment. Ed's going to be talking about Virtuali-Tee, a T-shirt that provides an educational, fully animated 3D peek inside the body. Many of you will no doubt have seen it, but hopefully some of you won't. It really is quite astonishing. We've also got Steve Dann, thankfully, joining us. Trip down to the coast for Steve from London. Steve heads up the VR/AR Association chapter in London, and Steve's going to be talking about medical realities and VR for surgeons, surgical training. We've also got Daniel and Helen from Alchemy VR, who are at the back, who will also be demoing and talking about their amazing work with David Attenborough and Tim Peake. They've been creating educational VR experiences for the Science Museum, and it's all pretty cool stuff. And finally, we've got Tim Fleming, hopefully, from Future Visual, who's also going to be talking about work he's been doing in the training area with IATA, the Aviation Transport Association. So we've got some really high caliber people here. We've got some amazing demos, and I'd like to kick off with Ed. Thank you. Right, just find your slides, Ed. Everyone but.
Hello, everybody. So, Curiscope. How many people here know of Curiscope, know of me? Hello. Okay. don't need to bother then. So, Curiscope, what are we trying to do? So we're a local startup. We actually moved down here from London 18 months or so ago. So we're based in the North Lane. So if anyone ever wants to come and actually say hi and try any of our things out, please do. What is our remit as a company? So, Curiscope is trying to get the whole world curious about the whole world. So we believe that, I just wanted to include this because why not? It's a very good moment. Gaming often centers around kind of the creation of alien worlds, for example. But we believe that the real world is far more exciting, far more visceral, far more of a kind of great use case for VR. Wouldn't it be a great idea for VR and AR to take us to places that perhaps we couldn't necessarily go to ordinarily? There's so much magic to discover in the actual world that exists around us. So it's good to see Alchemy guys, because I know they'll have worked on things like Attenborough, and I think Under the Ocean is probably one of the most fascinating places in the world. It is, for all intents and purposes, an alien world. And VR gives us the power to transport ourselves to these environments that we're perhaps otherwise completely disconnected from. So that could be under the ocean, but it could quite equally be inside the body. The body is this fascinating thing. This is inside an alveoli, so this is like nanoscopic VR. So this is actually seeing the individual cells and actually being inside somewhere that you can obviously never get ordinarily. And the body's an interesting thing. I think it's another great example of something that is always there, much like the bottom of the ocean, but it's something that we are never able to connect with because we're never able to physically transport ourselves somewhere. And I think this presents huge problems for people because we end up very disconnected from things like the marine world, very disconnected from things like our own health. So VR and AR is kind of this new immersive medium, but I very much kind of see it as just the next evolutionary step from things like the Science Museum and things like Discovery Channel and indeed David Attenborough. These people are all people who've created products and come up with visions on the basis of new technologies. David Attenborough launched BBC Two on the basis of TV being a fantastic new medium in which to learn. Our thesis is that VR and AR is the next evolutionary step of that, and we would like Curiscope to be part of it. So what are we up to as a company? When I was kind of doing these slides earlier, I was like, I was here a year ago, like what has actually happened? Am I just going to be doing exactly the same presentation I did last year? And actually we did a lot last year, maybe too much, I think is kind of fair to say. So I'm just going to kind of show you a few of the products that we've released and kind of why I believe they're important and kind of what we're trying to do with them. So this is the product I'm wearing. This is currently in Amazon, John Lewis, Selfridges, and the Science Museum. We're actually doing a residency at the Science Museum as of tomorrow morning. So all my other staff are kind of going over there to set up. So this is the product, the Virtuali-Tee.
Hello, my name is Hans Glover. I'm your virtual expert on physiology and anatomy. Let's explore and learn about your body. Let's take a look inside your heart.
So, super accessible products. I think that's kind of what we're very interested in as a company. A lot of you might know this, but the thing we launched on was a YouTube 360 video that's now been watched 30 million times. It's one of the most watched VR experiences of all time. And that's the kind of thing that excites me, bringing people into this medium who've never seen this before, who can be transported somewhere else. That's really exciting. So if you do want to have a go with that, it's a free app download and it's in there. I've included Bertie's meme that he did for me. Thank you very much. Philip Schofield being astonished by the product, which is a very good reaction. It was very, very good for sales, this reaction, it has to be said. So it's a great product. I'm really happy kind of with what we've done over the last year. We've also had a bit of an experiment with AR Kit. I think a lot of people might know us almost as more of a shark startup than anything else. And this is one of the technologies that's emerged in the last year that is really exciting for true scale. So this is us trying to be clever, playing by a sushi bar on the pier. Another thing we've done, something that we're really proud of this year, is this book, which is introducing people to virtual reality. So again, much like our other products, this is a product designed to be someone's first impression of VR, and this comes with multiple experiences within the app itself. You get a book, it introduces you to a lot of the concepts that exist behind VR. It's kind of this AR VR bridge that I think we're quite well known for as a company. This is a collaboration with Dorling Kindersley, and I think I put Dorling Kindersley in that bracket of Science Museum, BBC, Discovery Channel. They're very much a brand that inspires curiosity in the next generation. And we wanted to create a product that embodied that at a very, very accessible level. So you can purchase this on Amazon, Waterstones, it's consumer-led product. And it kind of wouldn't be VR if we didn't also get very excited about where the tech is coming. So something that we're really, really proud of, something we've been working on for the entirety of 2017. I mean, Hav is at the back. He's been working on that project with us for since we brought him on, so 15 months ago. So this is a project that has been called things like the closest thing to Blue Planet in VR. This is an exploration of the oceans where you work your way up through food chain in a very kind of interactive manner, feeding sharks and kind of whatever you might find in the ocean, and learning about how things like pollutants travel up the food chain. Play. There we go.
Welcome! Now let's get the formalities out of the way. You've decided to join the Curio Underwater Drone Research Team. I'm going to be training you up on how to use this rig to gather super valuable oceanic research. Mimics are going to be your arsenal of holographic creatures to lure in predators. Speaking of which, the proximity transducer is detecting something coming your way. It's big, and it's definitely a fish. Where did it end up? Just make sure it's not a We lose around 100 million sharks each year to shark finning. Get a bite from it! Quickly! Bring up one of its prey! Don't lose it!
So that's Operation Apex. So that's a project we just completed with HTC as a partner. That is now available on Steam. It's $20 full game. So I think where Curiscope fits into the kind of learning ecosystem is we create products at a consumer level that create the learning that you almost kind of don't know about. So I like Blue Planet as a reference. You don't watch Blue Planet because you want an educational experience. You watch Blue Planet because you want to be taken into another beautiful, immersive world. And learning is very much a byproduct of that. I think products like this are the manifestation of our belief that that is the best way to learn. And we want to create products that compete with gaming products in the market. So this is $20. The experience is however long you want it, but certainly a minimum of kind of 2 to 3 hours. And we're just about to do an Oculus update, which will come out in a couple of weeks. That is all from me. I have to run, unfortunately, but Hav is at the back, so Hav will take any questions, maybe. If you want to speak to me afterwards or have a chat, I have left a load of business cards, Virtuali-Tee, the products will be left in there, and all of you are kind of very welcome to come and visit us. We're 23 Vine Street. I would happily love to see any of you who want to come and meet and have more of a chat. Thank you very much.
Steve, are you ready? Okay.
Right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me down. Thank you to Joe, especially, for inviting me down. I'm Steve Dann. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Medical Realities. I'm co-founder with a very talented surgeon called Shafi Ahmed. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our journey and how we got there. But I want to talk, I want everybody to think about something first.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
The way we perceive the world is with our sense organs and our motor organs. We're constantly interacting with the world to perceive it. And virtual reality is just an art form that plays with that interaction. It's all about reality, it's all about people.
Personally, I think that virtual reality is the most important technology in the history of humanity.
Right, now I'm not sure if I go quite as far as Palmer there and say that virtual reality is the most important technology in the history of humanity, but it's actually got a lot of things going for it, especially in teaching and education.
What is real?
Oh, there we go. Virtual reality for medicine. I was very lucky about 2.5 years ago to actually meet Shafi Ahmed, and that's actually Shafi there. He's not actually performing an operation in virtual reality. That's just a metaphor for what we do. And he'd been doing some work with Google Glass to help train students, because he has 300 medical students under his wing at the Royal London Hospital. When he teaches an operation, he's only allowed to have 6 students in the operating theatre with him. So that means that 294 of his students don't get to see that training operation. And of course, once an operation is completed, that's an asset that's finished and done and gone. So we started talking about how you can use virtual reality in medicine. And in actual fact, it's a big talk. I mean, there's lots of different ways you can use it. Specifically because of what Shafi is doing and his speciality in teaching surgery, we decided to try and use virtual reality for training for medical students to become surgeons initially. And this started about 2 years ago. We actually did some tests. Bart's Trust, the Royal London Hospital is part of Bart's Trust. Bart's Trust and the Royal London Hospital have been fantastic in actually helping us experiment and actually interact with the students as well, to actually make sure that what we're doing is actually going to make a difference. So we started filming operations in 360 and showed it to the students, who were just blown away by it and said, well, look, for the first time we can see what's going on. Because actually those 6 students who actually get into the operating theatre don't see much of the operation. They mainly see the surgeon's back or the back of the nurses. They don't actually get to see very much. So we thought, well, this is actually getting very positive. And then in April of 2016, we decided to sort of take it up a notch, just to see whether what we were doing actually resonates outside the Royal London, outside the UK. And we did the world's first live-streamed operation in virtual reality. And it was actually seen by over 55,000 people using virtual reality headsets in 142 different countries around the world. And since then, I think it's been viewed nearly 300,000 times. So we actually knew that we're actually sort of getting onto something here, because a lot of people are very interested in virtual reality. A lot of people actually still don't know it. When we actually talk to students, I do a lot of teaching and talking to students, especially in hospitals and universities. And I don't expect them to be the sort of target audience for virtual reality. And I would say that only 20% of them have still sort of understood what VR is all about or have tried virtual reality. So medical reality is we're actually also trying to solve big problems in surgical training, because at the same time as we started off, the Lancet produced a fantastic report, well, a worrying report about what happens, what's the state of surgery worldwide. And basically, it's in an awful state. 2/3 of the world's population don't have access to safe or affordable surgery. That's over 5 billion people. So part of what we're doing will always be free, so that people, especially in developing countries, can actually get to find out how to carry out certain operations. And the actual biggest cause of death in sub-Saharan Africa actually is in childbirth. And actually, it's because a lot of people don't even know how to do C-section births. So that's one of the first things that we're actually going to sort of put out there. And we're going to be working in that regard with the Great Ormond Street Hospital. And we're actually sort of getting a lot of interest from hospitals, not only in this country, who are helping us, specialty hospitals like Harefield for heart, Imperial College, but also we've been filming in Bari in Italy, and also in America as well, and in India, because actually remote training using virtual reality really works in big countries where travel is difficult, such as India or China or Brazil. So this is our elevator pitch. It's actually what we're trying to do is, in actual fact, make access to training about surgery democratic. So people from anywhere around the world can actually see and be taught by the best surgeons in the world. And virtual reality is a great way of doing that, especially mobile VR, because we have different ways and techniques of actually showing the operations. Initially, we were going to produce Oculus versions and HTC Vive versions, but the students said, well, actually, this is really good, but what we really want is to have something that we can access anytime we want to. So basically using things like Google Cardboard. The students can now actually, with our medical realities mobile VR, download from anywhere in the world on any platform. That's Android, Apple, iOS, Oculus. We will be going and doing the Oculus versions, and the HTC Vive versions will be ready by the end of this month. And they'll be slightly different in that they'll be more interactive, because there's more things you can do with hand controllers and things like that. But we've been getting a tremendous amount of interest, really from everywhere. My team have been out to India, to China, to Japan, to Brazil, to America, to talk about what we're doing, because what we're doing is relevant everywhere in the world. So that just gives you a sort of flavour of what we're doing, because although we started off filming in 360, and a lot of people say actually 360 is not really VR, we're adding lots of things to it. We're multi-layering it, because as you can see from that little video there, we're using cameras actually inside the patient as well, so you can see the operation happening from inside the patient. But there's also animation that goes with it. There's also CT scans, MRI scans about the patient. And at the moment, we're actually using questions and answers for the students, really to help us, because we want to find out how well their understanding is of what they've learnt from our virtual reality, our virtuality training. We aim to have over 100 training modules, 100 separate different operations by the end of this year, and we'll just continue adding on. The actual part of what we're doing with the students, we ask them certain questions before they view it in VR, and then after they view it in VR, so that we get to find out how well they've understood what's going on, and we can actually alter and change what we're producing. But we're really excited about this part of this element of it, because later this year, hopefully in September, for the next year at St Mary's University in London, we're going to actually produce a virtual reality core program for the students. So actually they'll be able to take part of their courses in virtual reality and also get credits, hopefully, for their passes as well. So we think this is the start of something that's going to be really exciting and really big. This is one of my favourite quotes. This is by a guy called Daniel Kraft, who's a real sort of pioneer in what's actually sort of going on in virtual reality, augmented reality, and AI in medicine. He's really a sort of standard bearer for how things should be going. And for him to say that about our product was really, really great. And actually, I'm glad to say we've now actually got him on our advisory board as well, because we have a dozen surgeons and doctors from around the world, and also students on our advisory board to helping us going forward. So we see this as only the start of what virtual reality can be used for, because eventually we'll be doing actually simulations. Now, we don't think that full simulations in surgery are good enough yet. They're okay, they point the way. So we're actually sort of dipping our toe in the water to simulations, but eventually, and I'm not quite sure how far ahead in the future this is going to be, but within 2 to 3 to 4, perhaps even 5 years if we're unlucky, but we will be able to get there. We will be able to create fully simulated operations where you can actually step into the surgeon's shoes and actually do the operations yourself. And this is something which is actually going to revolutionize how surgeons especially are trained, because I've asked literally hundreds of surgeons now. I've got 2 favorite questions for them. And it's really, when are they most frightened? What actually scares them about surgery, if anything at all? And they will say actually 2 things scare them. And that's the first time they ever perform an operation, because they're literally dropped in at the deep end. You see what people are doing, and then you have to do it. They don't actually have any practice on live people until the very first operation that they have to do. And the second time is when they're doing an operation and something out of their control goes wrong with the patient. Blood pressure goes down or something like that. The first time they have to react to a problem is when they face it for the first time. Now, by using virtual reality simulation, they'll, in actual fact, be able to do surgery before they actually have to operate on a real patient. And also, we'll be able to throw in curveballs about lowering of blood pressure, if the heart stops, or whatever it might be, so that they will actually get, for the first time, the chance to know what it's like to, in actual fact, overcome those problems. And virtual reality, especially for surgery, is almost tailor-made, because surgery requires two things. It requires a technical knowledge about what you're doing, about how you're actually using your scalpel or stitching people up, but also a surgeon has to work with a team, and that team is all around him. So you've got two things. You've actually got to have impart the technical knowledge, but also the knowledge of actually how to work with your team. And virtual reality is perfect for that. Virtual reality and augmented reality are going to make a big difference in medicine as a whole. And in actual fact, I think it's probably going to be one of the drivers in how virtual reality and augmented reality go into the future, because VR and AR are tailor-made for lots and lots of different things in medicine and healthcare. So I hope that the next 5, 10 years are going to bring some amazing things where we can do virtual reality simulations. We can help teach people. We can help teach people not in this country, but around the world as well, and also save lives. Thank you.
Okay. Here we go. Next slide.
Cool. Hello everyone, thank you to Wide Sussex, to Fusebox and Digital Catapult for inviting us down. As the big screen says, I am Dan. I'm the lead creative for VR and AR at Alchemy VR. A bit of background about us. Alchemy VR spawned from Atlantic Productions, a documentary production company, about 3 and a bit years ago. We pride ourselves in producing immersive educational experiences that use engaging storytelling. Our VR experiences have been exhibited in museums across the world, such as the Natural History Museum in London, the Australian Museum in Sydney, the Canadian Museum of Nature, and the Trondheim Science Centre in Norway. But the one I'm going to quickly take you through today, and the one we have showcasing here tonight just round the corner where you came in, is our VR experience for the Science Museum. Here's a little trailer to begin with.
Starting deorbit burn. There's no room for error.
Cool. So I'm just going to take you through a little sort of making of kind of presentation of how we achieved this experience that's been running for about 10 months so far and been doing really well at the Science Museum. As I said, the experience was commissioned by the Science Museum back at the beginning of last year to accompany their landmark acquisition of the Soyuz capsule that Tim Peake, the first British astronaut to go to the ISS, travelled back to Earth in. The aim was to provide an add-on that would enhance the visitor experience whilst further educating the visitors about the capsule. Obviously, visitors weren't able to climb into the real capsule, so what better way of getting visitors into the capsule than through virtual reality? As experience was to act as an educational tool for the Science Museum, the resulting experience had to be factually accurate to the nth degree. The simplest way to retain accuracy was to film the experience in live action, using a physical model of the Soyuz capsule and using green screen backgrounds to simulate the space outside. So we did a little test. We recreated the inside of the capsule in our offices. This was done using the exact measurements taken from NASA blueprints. As you can see, it looks very high-tech and NASA-like, as you can see. But in the end, we decided that actually once we put all the chairs together and used whiteboards as the walls, it was a far too confined a space to be able to use 360 cameras, which with the current technology still struggle in tight, small spaces. And we also then realized we wouldn't be able to simulate zero gravity, which was probably even a bigger problem. So a full CGI solution was the only way. But like I said, we had to keep it accurate, given that we were building it from scratch all of a sudden. We sent our teams to Amsterdam, where there was a true replica of the capsule, to take thousands of photographs from every single angle. We turned these photographs into sort of a mesh texture, then projected them onto a 3D model. The photorealistic imagery was so high res that actually ended up taking 100 computers a whole month to render the full 12-minute experience. There's a lot of waiting around. In this experience, you take the POV of the astronaut, as you'll see if you come try the experience around the corner later. One cool thing we did was actually we used motion capture to recreate the arm and body movements that were effectively your arm and body movements, given that you were a POV of the astronaut. We wanted them to feel natural, and if we kind of rigged the CGI avatar and moved the arms and legs robotically, we felt that the people would get the sort of uncanny valley kind of uneasiness by looking down and seeing strange, sort of unnaturally moving arms and legs. So we use motion capture. If you look at this sort of previs wireframe that's constantly spinning, we put the little camera in the astronaut's head. So as it spins round, you might be able to see the little camera inside the astronaut's helmet. But we actually ended up having to cut off the motion capture data from the neck up so that the camera kept static. The head movements picked up by the mocap with the mocap artist inside meant the camera was jerking around and meant the POV was shifting back and forth, up and down, and actually ended up making people quite nauseous and sick. So we just cut the mocap data off our neck, kept the camera static, and then used the mocap data to move the arms and legs in the experience. In terms of application in the museum environment, they've been shown in dedicated VR theatres, both installed at the London and Manchester Science Museum sites. Over 51,000 people have become astronauts in the VR experience so far, including Tim Peake himself, and obviously he was an astronaut before. So he didn't really need to go in again, but what he said was that it was truly very close to the real thing. But maybe someone from our company paid him to say that. I don't know. Anyway, it's now touring the country, reaching places like National Railway Museum in York, the National Museum of Scotland, and the National Museum Ulster in Belfast. There's also a bespoke bus going around the country, which has been designed to drive into the more underprivileged communities, and the results have amazed us. 70% tour occupancy, amazing uptake, and basically it just goes to show education doesn't have to be boring. Thank you for listening. Please come try out the experience. We've got a 4-minute version running tonight, and please do contact me if you have any questions or just want to know more. Thank you.
Tim, are you ready?
I'm Tim Fleming, founder of Future Visual. I'm all that stands between you and beers or leaving, so I'll be ages. So we are based in Brighton, and we are all about making VR work. We spent 3 years working specifically on virtual reality. I've worked in graphics and hardware for a long time. We've got a very experienced team in-house. So our clients are McDonald's, Ferrari, John Lewis and Peugeot. But there's 3 areas we work in, which are retail, training, and behavior change. We've got a heavy focus on creating a full CGI interactive environments, so the frameworks we create kind of move across all those sectors. I thought I'd start with just a quick look at the landscape of VR. You know, there's lots of enthusiasm, there's lots of meetings like this, you know, but actually getting it to convert out in the marketplace is still quite difficult. So I think we're having to do a lot of education around the benefits of VR, particularly in, you know, the training space. We are seeing uptake. We are seeing people taking a slightly longer term view, but there's still a long way to go with the education. And what we do to try and explain it to our clients and explain the benefit rather than just go, it's VR, it's great, you've got to have it, is we break it down into these kind of analogies, which is the first space. If you think of this in the context of retail, well, actually, let's think of it in the context of training, as it's a training talk. If you use the first space, that's where you actually have access to the item you're trying to train on. So for aircraft, it would be having access to the actual physical airplane, and you know the expense and the cost that normally incurs. But you have a really great training experience because you're actually using the object. The second space is online, or that would be classroom training, you know, where there's lots of talking, lots of pointing at whiteboards, lots of nodding at heads, lots of going through images, and then lots of forgetting when you actually get into the scenario that you're supposed to be remembering what you've done. And we see this opportunity, which we're calling the third space, which when you have these experiences that feel so real and you have a kind of kinesthetic response to the environment, that the learning is much more powerful and much more memorable. And you're able to give people access to situations and scenarios that they wouldn't normally have. So the way we sum that up is we give access to situations and scenarios that are physically impossible or prohibitively expensive. And when people start to think about that, they go, okay, it's expensive to get into this VR, but you know, the tangible benefit of this training in high-value, high-risk environments might just be worth it. There's some interesting data out there around recall. You know, this is by HTC, so it's probably fudged. But, you know, they're throwing these kind of numbers around. You know, anyone that's selling VR case studies, you know, obviously VR is going to come out on top. I got a newsletter through today that said PDF learning is 7.4% recall. Gamified environments, 9.3. VR, 9.4. So anyway, that's where we are. I think as we get more actual hard data out of these environments and use cases, you know, that's what we're crying out for at the moment. You know, we're putting people in VR and they're going, yeah, it's great, but you know, we need more data. So this is a piece we built for IATA, who are the International Air Transport Association. It was called Ramp VR. It was for ground crew. It was giving ground crew the kind of level of training that flight crew normally receive. Typically, ground crew go through a couple of days training, and if they're lucky to get access to the aircraft, of course, they all get out there, and, oh, there doesn't appear to be anything wrong with this one, which is, you know, what you'd hope. So we built Ramp VR. There's this error matrix for all the different arrival phases, pre-arrival, post-arrival 1, post-arrival 2, pre-departure. We've also got day and nighttime options, high visibility, low visibility, different aircraft types, you know, a real range of scenarios that they're not normally going to have. And this particular sector, if there's an accident with GSE, which means ground service equipment, like if someone dings an aircraft, it's actually a $3 billion a year problem, because what happens is someone knocks an aircraft, even though there's supposed to be a no-blame culture, of course they keep quiet about it. aircraft turns up at the next airport and someone who spots the dent or the damage reports it, and has this big knock-on in terms of scheduling and availability and positioning of flight crew. So it's actually a massive problem. I'll see if we can, see if this will play.
In this module, you will undertake the pre-arrival
Oh yeah, of course,
checks.
my voice was used for a guide.
You have been
yeah.
positioned
it's
at
not
the
on
head
there.
of
Here we go.
stand prior to the aircraft arriving.
Gonna work?
You will now start the inspection by moving along the stand centre line, stopping at the stand boundary line.
Okay, so the users in there, they're moving around using teleportation. Obviously, we try and design everything so that there's zero nausea. There's an error, the GSE is out of bounds. This particular product was used as a testing tool. It wasn't used as a learning tool, so people would go through their couple of days of training, and then they'd be put into this, and they wouldn't be given any prompts or any clues. They'd have to go and find the errors. But the trainer could see what they'd spotted and could see what was coming up, so if they chose to help them, they could. I'll just move it on to the next page if I can. I'm lost. There's nothing else going on.
This module starts after the aircraft has arrived on stand.
Okay,
The
so
engines
aircraft
have
has
spooled
arrived,
down, the anti-collision beacons have been switched off, the chocks have been inserted,
etc.,
and safety
etc. You get the
cones are
idea.
in
More
place,
GSE
and the
turns up,
aircraft
more
is now
problems.
secure. You
All
are
the way up
positioned
to
at the head
the
of
tug
stand.
arriving.
The purpose of
If
the
I can-
post-arrival check is to ensure that
Alright,
all
there we
the
go.
safety procedures associated with aircraft
Turn
arrival
that off and do that. So yeah, as I was saying, range of aircraft, range of lighting conditions, and this is where they really started to see the value. Because if you can put people in nighttime scenarios, this became much more difficult to spot the errors, and people in training didn't, never normally have this kind of access. We also built a marshalling module, which was pretty complicated actually. So people waving in aircraft. So you'd identify the stand, you'd then steer it in, you'd speed it up, you'd slow it down. And we used a neural network to understand all the different gestures, because of course we had people with different heights, different body frames, so we had to run the gestures thousands of times and then come up with an average. But again, that's been very well received. So that's actually out there as a product. Got announced middle of last year. It's out there being sold, and actually they just got in contact yesterday about discussing some more modules and some updates to that. So that's really promising. That's that's an example of VR actually working. It's solving a business case. It's being used. It's being sold, and they come back and they want more. Great. So this next piece is, it's actually a secret project that I'm not really allowed to talk about, but that makes it much more interesting. So this draws on a lot of our strengths. It's got a lot of multiplayer. Well, this particular one's got 4 people in VR simultaneously. There's also got second screen activity, where you've got another team who are able to influence your environment in real time, so they can choose to help or hinder you. And this super sexy secret project comes under the category of team building. But what we actually found was, what it did was it got people to reveal who they actually were. So you get these people coming in on these sort of organizational change days and go, oh yeah, I'm always there for the team, I'm going to make sure everyone's okay, all the kind of standard guff that people say in those kind of cultural days. But then you put them in this and you see how they actually acted. And we had a God mode where you could go around the environment, but they couldn't see you. So you get the manager coming in who's like, oh yeah, I always make sure everyone's okay. And then he's really bad at it, but his team members are saying, oh, it's the green one. And he's saying, I've got the green one. I'm standing right in front of him, but he can't see me. I can see he's not holding anything. So really quite interesting. And then they come out for a debriefing and get told, okay, so you were really struggling, but you didn't even ask any questions on what you're supposed to be doing. You just kind of saved yourself. Why don't you're supposed to be working as a team. Go back in and see how you perform. And the other interesting piece about this is because you know who each other is because you can hear your voices, but you're all embodied as this similar looking avatar. So it kind of leveled the playing field. So you arrive on the planetary surface, so you're then taught how to assemble all these different components. There's actually 2 more layers, but I'm not going to reveal those, so I don't feel so bad with my client that I haven't revealed too much. But anyway, I'll tell you. But then you go down a big shaft and you have to assemble all the components in this escape pod and escape. And you can either choose to save yourself or leave your team members to get buried by rocks. But it's a lot of fun. And we think multiplayer is super strong. You know, at the moment, because this had to have really high fidelity, it is a location-based piece. So we have to rig all the pods at a fixed location. But obviously, with 5G coming along, we'll be able to do this globally. And that piece got reversioned into Mandarin. It's been out to China. It's been in Hong Kong. They're talking about doing a year installation. And a second product has been commissioned, where we're now building a 6-person piece. So if anyone's got any questions, please come and see me afterwards, or you can get my details here. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim, and thanks also to Ed and Steve and to Daniel. I've just got a couple of other notices to share with you about some upcoming events here. Bear with me a sec, and then we'll open up for demos, more drinks, that kind of thing. Right, here we go. Okay, so yes, the demos. Iona Scott's a resident here. Fantastic artist, and she's got her really interesting plankton world project outside demoing. And this is the product of a lot of work over a number of years at Kew Gardens, so I encourage you to go and try that one out. Helen and Dan from Alchemy VR, you've heard Daniel talk about the Tim Peake experience. That's outside for you to see. And Ed has left the Virtuali-Tee in the room just over there, so encourage you to try all these things out. Okay, quick map of where things are, roughly. Yep, okay. And then there's another notice about more VR after this event. We wrap up at 9 tonight, so if you do want to carry on and try some other things, the World's End pub is literally straight behind us on London Road, and you can go and do some more VR over there. They've got dedicated facilities. The Immersive Lab here, by the way, it's another one of the facilities available to the residents. So we've got a demo suite in there, which has got Vive, Rift, Daydreams, all the kind of stuff you need, as well as the cube room just behind you there where the big door is. And that's kind of set up at the moment with Vives and all sorts of other tools. We've got a mocap suit here. We've got EEG hairnet type things, if you've seen the Black Mirror episode, on order. We're also going to have pretty sophisticated 3D scanner, portable one here, hopefully, in the next couple of months. A whole bunch of other tools. So being an immersive lab basically means the Digital Catapult gives us grants to buy kit, and the residents here, we kind of polled everyone on Slack and said before Christmas, what would your Christmas presents be? 3D scanner was kind of top of the list, and then some EEG equipment, that kind of thing. So we're trying to deliver on that promise for everyone here. So 50 quid a month to become a resident is a pretty good deal. So I encourage you to inquire more about that if you're interested. Okay, final thing, the next events. We've got a digital drop-in on the 16th, all about quantum computing. So we'll be joined, I believe, by researchers from Sussex University, and encourage you to sign up for that. We've also got the next Brighton, VR Brighton meetup in March, all about the music industry. There'll be some really interesting speakers there, including Melody VR, who some of you might have heard of, who've raised a bucket load of money to become the music VR platform. So I'd be really interested to hear from them. We're also focusing in April on immersive storytelling. And this has kind of come out of these conversations, these events, us asking, you know, what kind of things are you guys interested in? So any thoughts, ideas, topics that you might want to see featured, let us know, and we'll do our best to source the best speakers we can find from the local area and from outside. So, yeah, please let us know. You can tweet at Digital Catapult Brighton, DigiCat Brighton, sorry, anytime, and we'll pick up and respond. That's it. Thanks ever so much for coming, everyone. Get yourself another beer.